Let me say something that a lot of people need to hear. I am just being honest is not always honesty. Sometimes it is camouflage for cruelty. Sometimes it is bluntness without responsibility. Sometimes it is disrespect wearing the costume of truth. And if you have ever walked away from someone feeling cut open, diminished, humiliated, or strangely ashamed after they said, I am just being honest, then you already know what I mean. Because real honesty and cruelty do not leave the same fingerprint. Real honesty may sting, yes. Truth may be uncomfortable. Truth can expose things we do not want to face. But truth, when it is carried by integrity, does not need to devalue you in order to be spoken. That is the difference. Honesty says what is true. Cruelty enjoys what the truth does to you. Honesty cares whether the truth can be received. Cruelty uses truth as a weapon and then calls your pain immaturity. Honesty seeks clarity. Cruelty seeks control. And this is why some people hide behind a face. I am just being honest, because it gives them cover. It lets them wound you and still feel righteous. It lets them say something harsh, degrading, humiliating, or unnecessarily cutting, and then shift the problem onto you. Now you are too sensitive. Now you can't handle the truth. Now you are emotional. Now you are dramatic. Do you see the trap? They hurt you, then they redefine your hurt as weakness, and somehow they walk away feeling superior. That is not honesty. That is ego control. Because for some people, honesty is not about truth. It is about dominance. It is about deciding that their perspective deserves to enter the room without tenderness, without timing, without wisdom, without restraint. It is about using bluntness to establish power, to make you smaller, to make themselves larger, to keep you off balance, to remind you that they can touch your self-worth whenever they want, and then call it realness. And this is where many people get confused, because they think, well, maybe they are right. Maybe I do need to hear hard things. Maybe I am too sensitive. But let me tell you something clearly. Sensitivity is not the problem when someone is consistently using truth to injure rather than illuminate. There is a difference between being corrected and being demeaned. There is a difference between being told the truth and being spoken to with contempt. There is a difference between someone helping you see clearly and someone enjoying the position of being the one who gets to define you. And that last part is very important, because sometimes weaponized honesty is not even mainly about the content of what is being said. It is about who gets to hold power in the interaction, who gets to speak, who gets to define reality, who gets to name your flaws, who gets to position themselves above you as the truth teller, while you are reduced to the one who must receive, absorb, and recover. That is why this kind of honesty can feel so violating, because it is not only communication, it is hierarchy. It is one person using directness to establish psychological elevation over another. And people who do this often pride themselves on being real. They will say, I just say it like it is. I don't sugarcoat. I'm bluntly honest. That's just who I am. But let me ask a better question. Why is brutality the part of your honesty you are most committed to preserving? Why is cruelty the hill you want your personality to die on? Why is your self-image so attached to saying hard things without softness, wisdom, or care? Because mature honesty is not afraid of gentleness. Mature honesty does not need an audience to bleed in order to feel true. Mature honesty knows that truth and dignity are not enemies. And this is why some people reveal themselves. Because if you need them to be truthful without being demeaning, they act like you are asking them to become fake. And that is not what is happening. You are asking them to become responsible for timing, responsible for tone, for motive, responsible for whether the thing they call honesty is actually serving truth or serving ego. And a lot of people do not want that kind of responsibility, because then they would not have to confront something difficult, that they are not just honest, they are careless or controlling or contemptuous or emotionally undisciplined or secretly gratified by the power of making someone else feel small. And that is why they keep hiding behind honesty, because honesty sounds noble, cruelty does not. So let me go deeper. Sometimes people use bluntness as a way to lower your self-perception, to keep you unsure of yourself, to weaken your confidence, to create a dynamic where you become more eager for their approval because they keep positioning themselves as the one who sees the truth about you. That is devaluation. That is not insight. That is a person using criticism to slowly shape your internal world in their favor. And every interaction becomes destabilizing. You are bracing for the next honest comment, the next jab, the next casual humiliation, the next truth bomb that leaves you bleeding, while they stand there calling it growth, and your nervous system starts adapting to that atmosphere. You become more hesitant, more self-conscious, more eager to avoid triggering their honesty, more likely to question yourself before they even speak. That is not communication. That is conditioning. And many women have lived under this without having the language for it, especially if the person doing it is respected, intelligent, confident, charismatic, just a straightforward person. But straightforwardness is not the same thing as emotional violence, and confidence is not the same thing as character. Some people are not strong because they tell hard truths. Some people are simply unrestrained. And restraint matters, because if your version of honesty consistently leaves people diminished, ashamed, confused, or internally collapsed, then what you are offering may not be truth at all. It may be unresolved aggression with a moral label on it, and that is dangerous. Because once cruelty borrows the language of honesty, it becomes much harder to confront. Now the victim feels guilty for being hurt. Now the victim feels weak for wanting tenderness. Now the victim feels childish for wanting truth to come without humiliation. And that confusion protects the person doing the harm. So, let me say this plainly for anyone who needs permission to name what they are experiencing. You are not too sensitive because you do not like being caught open in the name of honesty. You are not weak because you want truth without contempt. You are not immature because you can tell the difference between correction and degradation. That difference is real. And your ability to feel that is not fragility, it is discernment. Because truth does not need to strip you of dignity to be true. Truth does not need a cruel tone to be valid. Truth does not need to mock you, belittle you, expose you, or ridicule you in order to enter your life. And some of you need to stop giving people moral credit for the harm they cause, simply because they attached the word honest to it. Call it what it is. If it repeatedly humiliates you, destabilizes you, lowers your sense of self, and gives them a strange sense of superiority, it is not just honesty, it is harm. And maybe this is the shift. Maybe the shift is no longer asking, were they telling the truth? Maybe the shift is asking, what was the spirit behind the truth? And what did it do to me? Because the spirit matters, the motive matters, the effect matters, and not every truth teller is safe. This is Redefine Your Narrative. And maybe the narrative you need to redefine is this: not everyone who says hard things is brave. Some people are just cruel enough to call their contempt honesty. God bless you.